Okay, we are ready to go. Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar, An Introduction to KSR Evidence. My name is Willemijn Linden. I am the database manager for KSR Evidence, and I will be your moderator and host today. I joined Klein & Systematic Reviews, or KSR, early 2018, and I manage the database day to day, and I am the main point of contact for KSR Evidence. So here is the outline for today's session. After going over some housekeeping rules, I will give a brief overview of the development and functionality of KSR Evidence to just give you an introduction to the database. After this, I will showcase the advanced search functionality and explain some of those operators. Then I will hand over to our speaker, Dr. Robert Wolf, who will present a deep dive into the process we employ at KSR Evidence to critically appraise a systematic review. At the end, there is a dedicated Q&A session, but of course we welcome questions at any time. Now, before I introduce our panelists and talk a little bit more about KSR Evidence, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will share a link with you after the event is complete, and we will put it up on our website and YouTube as well. We welcome you to revisit the content and share it with your colleagues at any time. We also invite your comments and questions throughout the session. So to do this, please locate the Q&A box. It should be at the toolbar. And if you think of a question for the speakers or for myself at any point, just type it in that Q&A box and I will either pose it to our speakers or hold it for the Q&A at the end of the session. And just as a side note, our KSR Evidence team is always happy to help you with any query you might have. So if you think of something after today's webinar has ended, I know that always happens to me, please do get in touch with us. Finally, the expected duration of this webinar is around 45 minutes for the session itself, with a further 10 to 15 minutes for any questions. Today's speaker is Dr. Robert Wolf, with Senior Information Specialist Lisa Sturck joining us for the Q&A. Robert is the Managing Director of KSR, and before joining KSR in 2008, he worked on a variety of projects for reimbursement agencies in several countries, as well as pharmaceutical companies and scientific societies. Robert was a member of the development group for the ROBIS tool and part of the steering group for the development of ProBest. And he will tell you how we use ROBIS to critically appraise systematic reviews later this session. Lisa is one of our senior information specialists and experienced in designing and running literature searches. She has also been involved since the very beginning with the development of KSR Evidence. Now, I'm going to give a brief overview of some of the main functions and a little bit more background information about how KSR Evidence was developed. So KSR Evidence is a database of systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and health technology assessment reports published worldwide in healthcare since 2015, dating back to 2010 for topics related to pain. For many systematic reviews, KSR Evidence provides a critical appraisal and a short, accessible bottom line. The bottom line provides a brief summary of the key clinically relevant implications of the results reported in the review and includes information about the reliability of these results. Robert will tell you more about that. KSR Evidence is available on a subscription basis with costs dependent on the size and type of organization. If you want to know more about our subscription models, please contact us. As participants in this webinar, you will all receive a free access code after the webinar has ended, so you can try out KSR Evidence and see if it suits your needs. Now, for a little bit of history that I will keep short. KSR Evidence was developed by Klein & Systematic Reviews Limited, or KSR, an independent research company that produces and disseminates systematic reviews, cost-effectiveness analyses, and health technology assessments of research evidence in healthcare. KSR Evidence Limited now forms a separate company. Okay, so you might be familiar with the database of abstracts of reviews of effects, or DARE. This was a database funded by NIHR and managed by the Center for Reviews and Dissemination, or CRD, from 1994 to 2014. For those of you who are unfamiliar with DARE included systematic reviews which evaluated the effects of health and social care interventions and the delivery and organization of health and social care services. Unfortunately, funding for this database stopped at the end of 2014, and Jos Kleinen, who is a founding director of KSR Evidence, and also a former director of CRD, thought that despite the loss of funding, a database of systematic reviews was still relevant. As a result, KSR Evidence was developed with the aim of expanding the original scope of DARE to include all healthcare-related systematic reviews and not just interventions. And not only that, but KSR Evidence also tweaked the critical appraisal process. So rather than appraising all systematic reviews, we have implemented a prioritization process where a reviewer screens all newly added systematic reviews and marks them as either priority or not a priority. And the priority records then go on to be critically appraised, which allows KSR Evidence to focus on those systematic reviews that are most likely to be of interest to users. So why systematic reviews, and how does KSR Evidence come into play? Well, systematic reviews are regarded as the gold standard of research literature. They sit at the very top of the evidence pyramid, and if you are undertaking research, you are likely to start by searching for systematic reviews. However, it is safe to say that systematic reviews have recently become somewhat a victim of their own success. In 2021, roughly 39,000 systematic reviews were published, and in 2022, this reached an all-time high of over 42,000. This growing production of systematic reviews can be a problem because systematic reviews inform guidelines and clinical decisions, but from a random sample from KSR Evidence of 530 systematic reviews published in 2020, only a small portion of them had a low risk of bias. So how does KSR Evidence come into play? Well, from the very early stages of development, we wanted to create a tool that would not only give people easy access to systematic reviews in healthcare, but would also allow them to analyze the quality and trustworthiness of those systematic reviews. However, we realized that that was just a very idealistic vision, and it is more complicated in the real world. The numbers in which systematic reviews are being published are growing every single year, and appraising systematic reviews requires time and expertise, and we quickly realized that we simply did not have time to appraise all systematic reviews. So we adapted that vision of KSR Evidence to the real world. We still aim to include all systematic reviews in healthcare. We have highly advanced search strategies developed by our in-house information specialists that find everything related to systematic reviews. And those results are then screened by those same experienced and qualified information specialists. Every record on KSR Evidence has been screened for inclusion. So you know that when you search KSR Evidence, you are searching the top of the evidence pyramid. We also put systems in place that allow us to prioritize the appraisal of highly relevant studies. I've already talked about that a little bit, and Robert will tell you more in a few minutes. Long story short, if you want to find systematic reviews and if you want to know if they are any good, KSR Evidence is an excellent place to perform your search. So I'm now going to turn off my video and give you a closer look at KSR Evidence here. So right now I am on the homepage where you can clearly see the number of systematic reviews currently in KSR Evidence. Recently, we passed 250,000 systematic reviews, which is just amazing. New reviews and critical appraisals are added almost daily, and our information specialists search several databases, as well as a number of national and international HTA organizations to locate the reviews and HTA reports using sophisticated and bespoke search strategies. You can find the lists of resources we search in the About Us section here. But for now, let's go back to the home page. So you can see here that the number of published systematic reviews increases every year. You can use these filters here to filter by publication date or by quality of the review. But for now, let me do a simple search for something that unfortunately we have not really been getting a whole lot of here in the UK, especially compared to last year. And it is raining as we speak. So a simple search will run the search across all fields, as you can see here. So for the results set I have here, you can see that for all records, it shows the title, the authors, the publication source, the quality of the review, and the bottom line, if there is one. If no critical appraisal is available, it will just show the bibliographic details. This makes it easy for users to see not only which reviews have been appraised, but also the rating they have been given. You can filter the results set further by clicking any of the filters on the left here. But let's say I only want to see reviews that have been critically appraised and have a low risk of bias rating. So that gives me 79 results, which I can then export, or I can save this search so I can come back to it later. So that was a very brief overview of some of the main functions of KSR Evidence. I'm now going to show you a more advanced search, which was put together by our information specialist, Lisa. Here we go. So Lisa will join our Q&A at the end of this session, should you have any questions for her. She's the one who put together this search for us. So you can see here that Lisa has put together 4 lines for us to take a look at. To start, you can build up your advanced strategy by clicking this plus icon. You can add as many lines as you like and remove them again by clicking the minus icon here. Now, line 1 to 3 are different ways of searching for vitamin D. So you can see that we've used the Boolean operator OR here to differentiate between the terms. The first line demonstrates a phrase search. We've put the terms between quotation marks, so it searches for those exact phrases. We can't use truncation here because we are truncating a single letter, but you can see truncation in line 3. So hydroxycholecalciferol would also find hydroxycholecalciferols. Line 2 expands the results found in line 1 by using a proximity operator. So this will pick up phrases such as vitamins A and D in the treatment of X, whereas a phrase search for vitamin D wouldn't find that. Now, of course, you wouldn't normally need to search on the terms in line 1 if you search the terms in line 2, but we wanted to demonstrate how to run phrase searches in line 1. You can also amend individual search lines. So let's add truncation to line 2 here and update the search. So now that we've added truncation, it will pick up vitamin and vitamins, and you can see it has updated the results there for me. To create line 4, I ticked lines 1, 2, and 3 and selected Boolean operator OR. Now, if I wanted to find records that referred to the use of vitamin D in COVID-19, I could use a search on COVID that I had previously saved and combine it with the results of my vitamin D search. So to do that, I click the heart here, and this will show my previously saved searches. So I'll append this one about COVID-19. And you can see it has added that saved search in a new line for me. So to combine these 2 searches, I select lines 4 and 5 and choose Boolean and there we go. I'll run that search for us. So we can also add limits to individual search lines. So for example, to line 4 here, I could add a limit that I only want to see records that were published between 2020 and 2022, the time when the spread of COVID-19 was classified as a pandemic by the WHO. So I've refreshed that again, and you can see that it now says it has a limit applied to it. We can also add additional filters, for example, by ROBIS rating or by journal. But for now, let's just take a closer look at the search strategy. So in lines 1 and 2, we entered multiple terms related to vitamin D to make sure every variation is picked up by the search. In line 2, we used a proximity operator near, so that the word vitamin or vitamins needs to be within 3 words in any order of D, D2, or D3. You can substitute the operator near for ADJ, ADJ, as both will work on KSR Evidence. This is so that any search from Wiley, Cochrane, Ovid, Embase can easily be copied across, saving time for people who have to search a range of databases. Another time-saving feature is that you can copy search lines and paste them directly into KSR Evidence. So for line 4 here, you can see it has that limit applied to it, but let's say I no longer want it. So I can simply go back and amend that search. I have to update it again. There we go. So you can see it now no longer has the limit here. And then when I expand the search, it also no longer shows the limit there. Now, as I said earlier, when I showed you the simple search, you can save and export results. So let me show you how to do that in a little bit more detail. To export results, just tick the records that you want. Over here, I'll just click these 3 and click export. This opens a new window where you can either export all search results in batches of 500 or just export the ones you have selected. And you can export files in either RIS or CSV format. Now, finally, let me show you how to save your search. So you can copy your search or you can save it and share it with other subscribers of KSR Evidence. So to save it, you click the heart. And this opens a window where you can see the lines that we have in the strategy here and when we ran the search, and we can give it a name. So I've filled this out already. You can fill out when you want to receive alerts. So I'm going to set this to daily, and then you click save. There we go. You can find all your saved searches here, which is under your account settings. And you can see that as I've clicked that, a pop-up has appeared warning me that I will lose the search if I go to a different page. This was put in so that you do not accidentally close the tab and lose your work, but we actually want to go there. So here you go. In the saved search menu, you can change how often you would like to receive email notifications. You can also edit the search, run it again, and you can also share the search with another subscriber by clicking the share button here. This will produce a URL, which you can copy this into an email or in a document and share it with someone else. So this was a more detailed look at the advanced search interface. I will now hand over to Robert, who will tell you more about critical appraisals and ROBIS, but I will remain available to answer your questions in the Q&A. Robert, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Bill, and welcome everyone. I would normally say good morning or good afternoon, whatever is appropriate. I think we have people from 20 different countries on the call, so I don't know which time zone you're in, but welcome to all of you. So, right. What I want to do in the next few minutes is to talk about the critical appraisals that are part of KSR Evidence and are a little bit of a unique feature of this database. And as a reminder, remember that the Q&A system is there at the bottom of the screen if you want to ask any questions for us to answer later. So you saw that earlier in a slightly more up-to-date screenshot by Will. So this was taken one Tuesday. So since then we have added more records. Shows you that indeed that is almost on a daily basis that new records are added. At the moment we are over 253,000. I think Will's screenshot even said 254,000. So it is growing. Most of them, as Will already highlighted, have been added after 2015 when we started this database, and about 1 in 9 of these records have a critical appraisal, as you can see there. Will's graph showed that already, that the numbers of systematic reviews that are published and that we identify each year are growing year by year. I remember that in the olden days, 10,000 systematic reviews per year was, everyone gasped at that and couldn't believe that that is happening. And now we are well past that and are well past the 40,000 mark. So more than 42,000 new records every year. We seem to be on track to repeat that this year as well. We aim to critically appraise around 300 systematic reviews per month. So currently we have roughly 1 in 9 critically appraised. And as Will said earlier, we have a process to identify systematic reviews that are more likely to be of broader relevance to the users of KSR Evidence, and those will then be fast-tracked to be critical appraised. In addition to that, subscribers to KSR Evidence can also request critical appraisals to say this is of interest to me and I would like to have a critical appraisal for that, which we then produce. So let's have a look at a critical appraisal. When you click into a record, it comes up with this very, very structured view, and it's always the same. That's why I talk you through it, that you basically find your way around the structure. So at the top, you will find the title. You have the authors underneath, and please note these are hyperlinks, so you could click any of these authors to find more records by this author in KSR Evidence. We have the bibliographical records underneath, including the PubMed reference and all of these if you need that. And then in the top right, you find the overall risk of bias assessment. So this one has been rated as low risk of bias. We have tools to print the record, to cite that record, or to write a comment to us about this record. And you have an outline there, which I will talk through in the next few slides, just to give you a better idea what is in each of these records. So one feature is that we have a bottom line, and despite the name, it will always appear on top, or fairly on top, because that is basically the summary of the findings and any limitations that we identified during the critical appraisal process. So this is, if you are in a rush, the bit that you should read to get an idea, is that relevant for my question? Is that something that I can use for whatever purpose? So the bottom line, as I said, tries to summarize the main findings, and basically then the question, how reliable is it? Do I need to consider anything when looking at these results? So back to the critical appraisal. So I said that you saw the overall risk of bias already in the top right corner when we have the record open, and then you also find a more detailed overall summary where you see how any concerns were addressed or not addressed by the authors. You find details of the review. That includes how many studies were included in this systematic review, how many participants were included, when was the last search, which obviously can be really relevant if you plan a systematic review in that area, or you want to know how up to date the information is. You find information on the review type, so that could be intervention, diagnostic, prognostic, and of course many other areas. And we also provide information of the objective of that systematic review, and then have details on the PICOs to give you an idea if these elements match your research question. That is followed, we are still going through the structure, the outline there that you see on the right. So the next section is the results section, which is a summary of the main results of that paper. Right, I mentioned earlier that the critical appraisal that we prepare for each of these, or for many of these systematic reviews, that is a little bit of a unique feature. And of course, it is then useful to be able to look into the concerns that were identified as part of this risk of bias assessment. And ROBIS works in these 4 domains, and we will discuss those in more detail in a moment. Where available, so where provided with the record that was sort of assessed, we also provide the original abstract as written by the authors of that systematic review. Here's a different example, just to give you an idea how it looks like if indeed problems were identified in the review. So you right away in the top right corner see, okay, this is not green anymore, this is red. So there is obviously something of a concern that I should know about. And then you can obviously look at the overall summary or the outline there to see in which domains this problem occurred. So there were a few references already now to ROBIS. That's the tool that we use to do the risk of bias assessment of the systematic reviews identified for KSR evidence. ROBIS is a tool which has been developed a few years ago by I would say very distinguished group of researchers. Just to highlight the first 3, Penny Whiting is a professor at Bristol. She was involved in ROBIS. She was involved in QUADRS 2, and more recently Probust as well. Jelena Sabovic was involved in the Cochrane risk of bias tool, and also in ROBINS, ROBINS-I, ROBINS-E, all these permutations of ROBINS. And Julian Higgins, just to mention another author, is the editor of the Cochrane handbook. So certainly some people that have an idea what's going on in the risk of bias world. So what does the tool look like? It is organized in a domain-based structure. So that's quite similar to tools you will have seen and used. So something like Risk of Bias 2.0, the latest Cochrane risk of bias tool, ROBINS-I, QUADRS 2, Probust. ROBIS is organized in 4 domains. You see that at the top there. In these 4 domains, you have these 21 signaling questions, 5 respectively for the first 3 domains and 6 in the last domain. And then you, based on the signaling questions, would rate the domain overall. And that then feeds into the risk of bias across the review. So all domains considered. So you can then in the records see where the problems were identified. And of course, you can click on any of these domains to see more details where the problem was. And here you will see that the first 4 risk of bias signaling questions were rated as probably yes. So yes, indicating there's unlikely to be a major problem. But the last one was indicated to be probably no. So that is based on the information in the paper, and the main bits of information that underpinned the risk of bias assessment in this domain is summarized there, highlighted yellow. Then, as I said, this feeds into the signaling questions, and the 5th one was the one where concern was highlighted because only English language studies were included. And of course, that is a risk of bias because other relevant studies might have been published in languages other than English. That's why it was highlighted here. Right, so the critical appraisals then have this overall summary to say how was that addressed, if at all, by the authors. And these critical appraisals are written by one reviewer and then independently checked by second reviewer, with the idea to reduce bias and error in these assessments. Right, so once more back to this screen, I just wanted to remind you that the structure is always the same of these critical appraisals, of all the records you find in KSR Evidence. And you are then able to find quite quickly the information you're looking for, I hope. And we believe that that is a useful tool for quite a range of people. So it could be health professionals that just try to find an answer to a clinical question quite quickly. Guideline developers are obvious potential users of this database, but also decision makers more generally, or researchers that want to get an overview of a field. And of course, for information specialists, this can be quite a useful tool as well, because it informs your scoping searches to see what has already been done in this area, and where could another systematic review feed into that. Right, I think that was my last slide. So thank you all, and back to you, Will.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that great explanation of the ROBIS tool and our critical appraisal process here. Please also allow me to introduce you to our Senior Information Specialist here at KSR Evidence, Lisa Sturck, who I hope will be able to start her video very soon. So just as a reminder, thank you, Lisa, for joining us. Just as a reminder, we have a Q&A open for you if you want to ask us any questions. So the first one, Lisa, is for you. Which resources do you search? So I know that I showed this a little bit briefly earlier, but can you tell a little bit more about the resources that we search?
We search really widely, actually, and quite frequently as well. So weekly, we do searches on Embase and Medline. So when I say Medline, that's all the Medline databases, all the in-process ones, as well as the current ones. So we do those weekly. We run those searches weekly. Monthly, we search a whole raft of other databases: CINAHL, PsycInfo, Cochrane Library, the Campbell Library. We search Lilac. We search Pedro, and we search PubMed, as well as doing the Ovid Medline searches, just to make sure we don't miss anything that's on PubMed but isn't on Ovid Medline. And then every 3 months we search the International HTA database, the INATA database. I search AMED or AMED, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce it. And we also do searches, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, apologies if you did, across a number of HTA organisations.
Thanks, Lucy. I think I did. I mentioned it briefly and I showed the list. So just as a reminder, you can find the list of resources in the About Us pages there. I showed it very briefly in my demonstration. Lisa, second question for you here. Do you have an idea how many records are added in a month?
Well, obviously it varies. Round about the sort of 3,000 mark-ish. That's records that are actually added to KSR Evidence. But to give you some idea of the sort of numbers that we're crunching here, our searches retrieve approximately around 30,000 references every month. Now, obviously, a lot of those are duplicates between databases and duplicates with records we've already found. And that whittles the total down to around about 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, depending on the resources. And then, like I say, approximately 2,000, 3,000, well, usually around the 3,000 mark are added every month to the database. So it's a huge amount of work, really, that we're saving the end user for having to look through all these vast numbers of records every month, kind of doing the hard work for you.
That is a lot of work. I am familiar as well with the HTA organizations to search. That is also a lot of work.
They're not easy. Lots of web resources. Yeah.
Yes, they are spread all over the place. Thank you, Lisa, very much for that answer. Robert, question for you. Why are there so many low quality reviews? What are some common pitfalls?
Well, I think that the short answer is because there are a lot of systematic reviews with problems in the research process. Well, I think the common pitfalls, I think quite a lot of problems are in the analysis section, but quite often we see more simple problems. So, for example, that crucial steps of the systematic reviews were only done by a single reviewer. So this title and abstract screening, the full text screening, the data extraction, something like that was only done by a single reviewer, which is a red flag, because that cries that indicates that there is a good likelihood that there are errors. Quite often we see that the searches were not really wide, only using a handful and not necessarily the most relevant resources, and then quite often limiting by language. So the advantage of the ROBIS tool then is of course that it is quite clear, thanks to the domain structure and the signaling questions, to identify, to highlight where the problem is. And then similar to other tools that you might have seen, think Rate or something like that, you then have an idea what caused that rating, and you can act accordingly to fit that into your work or the purpose of the review for you.
Thanks, Robert. Second question for you here. Were the ROBIS, were they assessed manually or through AI? They
were assessed manually. I know AI is obviously a hot topic at the moment for all sorts of reasons. And it's certainly something we keep an eye on. I say that from a personal point of view, but I would say that I can't see anytime soon that we would change that. And the AI mechanisms that I've seen so far are too error prone, and basically we rather have the human brain looking at it and then a second human checking it, than relying overly on AI.
Thanks very much, Robert. Lisa, question for you. What fields are available to search?
Well, you've got two, I'm sure Will showed you earlier, two basic options here. You've got the simple basic search, which searches just everything. And then we've got an advanced search option as well. In the advanced search option, you can select amongst a variety of different fields. So you can search on just title, you can search on title and abstract, you can search on author, you can search on the bottom line as well, which can be quite helpful if he's trying to do a sort of a bit more of an extension of a title and abstract search. You can search on journal title, KSR appraisal number. So there's a fair range of search options there. I think it's important to say as well that this was designed by information specialists to appeal to information specialists. As an information specialist, I know the sorts of fields that I want to search, and a title and abstract search was up there for me rather than just title. So those are the options we've got currently, but we're always open to other suggestions.
Thanks, Lisa. And that is indeed true. We are always open for feedback. In fact, I think we added the option to search the bottom line field after we received feedback from a subscriber. So it is very much always open for improvement and suggestions from people. Robert, question for you. Can you tell us a bit more about the prioritization process you use for critical appraisals?
Yeah, sure. I think I glanced over that a little bit, so fair enough question. So what do we try to do? We try to identify the records that are most likely relevant for users. So we have a couple of journals where we say any systematic review published in that journal will automatically be processed to critical appraisal. So that includes any Cochrane review, anything published in the big journals, think BMJ, think New England Journal of Medicine, that sort of level. But we also, in addition to that, one human looks through all the records to identify anything that could be of relevance. So, for example, we keep an eye on the news and see what is discussed at the moment. So obviously, when we had a certain pandemic a few years ago, we obviously try to be current there and try to find those systematic reviews that were most likely to be informative for people in clinical practice. But we also reacted to, let's say, some medical experts that resided in the White House at the time and had all sorts of interesting theories, and we try to sort of find the relevant evidence, even if it didn't always support the theories.
Thank you, Robert. Then we have another question for Robert, and I think a little bit for me maybe as well. How many people carry out a critical appraisal of one systematic review? So I know that it is a reviewer who writes, then another reviewer who checks, then a copy editor, and then it goes live. But before that, Robert, you just said someone also prioritizes a record. So technically that's what, 4 or 5 sets of eyes?
Well, 5 if you include the information specialist as well. So
yeah.
Yeah. So the screening is done by an information specialist, then it goes to priority screening, then there's one reviewer writing it up and also doing the critical appraisal, and that is then checked independently by another reviewer. And then finally, before it goes live, there's sort of an editorial process to iron out some things, and that's all done before it goes live.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, there are no more open questions. So Lisa, Robert, thank you very much for your time. As a reminder to everyone here, if you have any questions you would like to ask, please contact us using the details on this slide here. You can connect with us on Twitter, X now. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can send us an email, and the KSR Evidence team are very happy to help. Now, also just as a reminder, you will receive an email with a free trial access code that will be valid for a week, and the recording will be published very soon after today's webinar, so you will be able to watch it back. Now, all that is left for me to say is thanks again, Lisa, thanks again, Robert. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and goodbye.